What's going on, guys? Zuko back with another War Within video. This is for Holy Paladin. We're looking at some of the changes that are going to be coming in the War Within when it launches to the Holy Paladin talent tree in particular. There's a couple of abilities that have been moved around, a couple of abilities that have been completely changed in the way that they function, and overall some buffs and nerfs to some of the abilities as well. So let's just dive into the list here. I'm going to start with some of the major changes, which is that Light's Hammer is now gone. So Light's Hammer used to exist as a choice node right here with Holy Prism. That is no longer the case. Now Holy Prism is going to share a choice node with Barrier of Faith. So the next big change, of course, is that Barrier of Faith has been moved from over here. On the old tree, it used to be Barrier of Faith plus Reclamation as a choice node together, where Tears Deliverance is, and then Tears Deliverance was underneath that. So typically you always took Reclamation into Tears Deliverance into Boundless Salvation if you were going all the way down. And now you can just take Reclamation and Barrier of Faith together if you want to. You never used to be able to do this. So this actually gives Barrier of Faith a lot more potential to be played because you're no longer, like, Reclamation was a massive amount of mana regen that you were giving yourself, and it was kind of silly not to take it. So taking Barrier of Faith was kind of a problem, because Barrier is a good spell, but it's not so good that it, like, warrants getting rid of Reclamation. Now you don't have to worry about that. So pretty massive change right there. I would say on certain fights, like maybe big raid fights where you can get a lot of value out of the barrier, it's going to be quite good, and you can still have Reclamation. Maybe where Holy Prism's not going to, like in a raid fight, you don't want to use a lot of mana. Holy Prism ends up using a lot more mana than Barrier would, and Holy Prism just isn't going to give you the same kind of throughput healing-wise that Barrier would, which is what you're trying to do in a raid. In Mythic Plus, of course, Holy Prism is going to be probably a better choice, but remember, in the War Within, we're not going to have the tier set bonus that makes Holy Prism like a giga heal, right? So I think this is a genuine choice now, and I like Barrier of Faith a lot. I love that we can actually choose it with Reclamation now. I think that's a pretty big change right there. As I said, these things got moved around. Lots of things being moved. Light's Hammer is gone. I did like Light's Hammer quite a bit. The priority of Light's Hammer just went down in the latter half of this expansion because since Season 2, when we were using... we had the choice between using Light's Hammer or Holy Prism. Really, Holy Prism became the better spell because of the tier set bonus that we had. And it just, like, Light's Hammer was just, like, never touched again after that. I feel like if they just tuned Light's Hammer up a little bit, it would actually become a good spell again. But they don't want to, apparently, so it's just going to be gone. So those are the major changes in terms of talents that have moved around. Let's move on to the new ability here that's going to be happening. So this is a pretty massive change. On the right-hand side, Light of the Martyr is no longer an active ability. So let's just read what this does. While you're above 80% of your health, Holy Shock's healing is increased by 20%, but it creates a heal absorb on you for 30% of the amount healed that prevents that prevents beacon. So it should say, and it prevents Beacon of Light from healing you until it is dissipated. So the wording on this is a little bit weird. I believe my understanding of this is that it will create a healing absorb on you for the that prevents Beacon of Light from healing you. I don't think it prevents everything else from healing you, but I actually can't confirm this because I don't have the alpha access right now. Once I eventually get access, probably during the beta, I can totally confirm this. But my understanding of this, I think, is that it's going to prevent Beacon of Light from healing you. That's what the heal absorb does. It might just be a generic heal absorb, in which case this is actually probably terrible. I actually don't think that that's true. I think it's just a healing absorb for Beacon of Light. Because imagine if you press Divine Toll and you Holy Shock like 5 people, that the heal absorb is going to be massive on you. So if I'm thinking it only counts towards beacon healing. Basically what this means is you can't ever beacon yourself when you have Light of the Martyr talented. And that's the way Light of the Martyr worked in the original, in the version that it is now. You can't heal yourself through beacon with Light of the Martyr healing. So I think this passive buff makes sense to me. Now, if you go down one node, you get Bestow Light. Light of the Martyr's health threshold is reduced to 70%. So instead of being above 80, you only have to be above 70% of your health now, excuse me. It increases Holy Shock's healing by an additional 5% for every 5 seconds that Light of the Martyr is active. So up to 15% more healing for Holy Shock, which is pretty good. And then when you dip below 70% health, you actually get healed every second for 20% spell power, which is basically like an Aura of Mercy heal. What's the Aura of Mercy one? Aura of Mercy is 20.7%. So it is literally an Aura of Mercy heal that will get you back up above 70%. Now, remember, you can't really receive any beacon healing because you're going to be healing with Holy Shock all the time. That's putting a beacon absorb on you. But you can still get healed by regular spells. You can Word of Glory yourself, and it will heal you. And then it's also, this Bestow Light is going to heal you. So I think this is actually kind of interesting. What this basically says is you're going to get 25% more Holy Shock, actually 20% more Holy Shock healing, up to 35% more Holy Shock healing all the time. And the only catch for this is that you can't ever get healed by beacon. You just can't ever get healed by beacon, basically. Because, again, you're going to be Holy Shocking all the time. You're going to be putting this absorb on you. So that's the trade-off. You get a bunch of Holy Shock healing, but you can't beacon yourself. That's fine. In my opinion, as a Holy Paladin, that feels totally fine. You have so many defensives you can use, right? You can bubble yourself, bop yourself. You've got your 40-second DR. It's really, really good. You can also just heal yourself with other spells. You can do something like a Barrier of Faith, right? And then you can Holy Shock everybody else. Keep putting Barrier on yourself. And then it's kind of like another little mini beacon because it keeps accumulating healing that you're doing on other targets, and it gives you another absorb shield. So it just keeps giving you that bonus. So I think this is actually a pretty powerful idea now. I actually chatted with my brother about this, Hero, who he's played a lot of the Light of Martyr stuff over the last couple of years. He actually experimented a lot with it in like Shadowlands and even BFA. And one of the notes that he kind of said was that what they've done with the design of Light of the Martyr is sort of like a bit of a negative design. So instead of the player consciously choosing to use Light of the Martyr and it being sort of an active experience, they've done the reverse of that. They've made it so that it's something that just sort of happens behind the scenes. So you have less agency now because it's not an active ability anymore. And I understand that being a bit of a negative part of this, where you can't do any cool Light of the Martyr stuff anymore yourself. It's just sort of, you get this buff that happens behind the scenes. So it is what it is. I don't know if this is ever going to be used, but it is a huge boost to Holy Shock healing at the cost of never being able to be healed by beacon. That's my understanding of this. I think it still makes it okay. Let's move on, though. There are some other spell changes, some big ones, like Blessing of Summer is getting a big change. It's actually in here right now. This is just for Summer, not the other 3 buffs. Bless an Ally, it actually is on you, I believe, right now. Let me just make sure I'm saying this right. 20% of all healing that you do is converted into damage onto a nearby enemy, and 10% of all damage is converted onto healing on a nearby injured ally. I believe this is on you. I don't know if this works on, like, if the ally doing healing will be converted. So it could work that way. That's how this reads. It might be like best to put this on the tank then. Like, if you put this on a DPS who doesn't do any healing, then you're losing like a good chunk of the value of this. So the best person to put this buff on would be yourself. Maybe that's their whole point. The second best person would be the tank, because they do a lot of self-healing and they do a lot of damage. But this basically acts like a Vamp Embrace or an Ancestral Guidance from Shaman now. That's exactly how this is going to function. But the value of how good this is going to depend on who you put it on and how much damage and healing they're doing when you put it on them. So, bit of an interesting change there. I don't mind it at all. I like having additional healing coming from this. I think that's actually a really good change. So, that's pretty cool. Now, there's a bunch of tuning that happens here. First of all, there's some Beacon of Light changes. This is actually really massive. Beacon of Light has essentially gone down by like 60%. Like, what's half of 25? 50% of 25 would be 12.5. So it's gone down about 45%. Let's say 40%. You lost 40% of your beacon healing. That is a lot to lose. Like, it only transfers 15% instead of 25. Barrier of Faith also got knocked down a little bit. We're going to talk just about Beacon, though, for a second. Beacon of Virtue is the same. So you put it on 5 targets again, and it only is going to heal for 15% instead of 25. So, again, just a massive drop there. I do not know how Beacon of Faith works. They have not mentioned in the notes there whether Beacon of Faith is still going to be 2 targets at 30%, or is it now 2 targets at 15%. I don't know the answer to that. I think it would be kind of cool if Beacon of Faith stayed at 30 to give it that niche. So you can either go Virtue, which is 15% on 5, or Faith, which is 30% on 2. I think that makes sense to me. But we'll have to see what they kind of go with here. I think this kind of pushes everything towards Beacon of Faith. This definitely is a huge nerf to Virtue. And if Beacon of Faith stays the way that it is a massive buff for Beacon of Faith. So I'm a really big Beacon of Faith enjoyer. We're going to have to see how this kind of works. But either way, it's a 40% nerf to Beacon healing in general, which is just kind of crappy. To be honest, though, really quick caveat here is that Beacon of Faith, like Beacon healing, almost always overheals. It overheals a lot. I'm telling you, I've played a lot of Paladin in the last like 3-4 weeks now. Tons of Holy Paladin. My Beacon healing is always 40% overhealing or more. It's just a massive amount because, especially if you have Beacon of Faith, because it's going off all the time. If you have Virtue, a little bit less so. But anyway, let's move on. There are other abilities that got buffed and nerfed. As I said before, Beacon of Faith, Barrier of Faith, sorry, now accumulates only 20% of the effective healing that you've done instead of 25. Very slight nerf. And then down here, Holy Prism cooldown went up by 10 seconds. That's a lot, right? So it's 50% longer than it was before. That's a pretty big nerf there. Although, if they've changed the numbers of this, then it's fine. It looks to me like the spell power coefficients might be a little bit different. I can probably check really, really quick here. Let's look at this really quickly on Paladin. Let's go to Holy. Let's look at the spell power coefficient on this one. So it's 152.45. No, it looks like it's the same. 490 spell power. It looks like it's the same here. So if it's the same, without the tier set bonus, Holy Prism is not that good. It's a big mana sink. So this is just a straight nerf. Holy Shock healing is going up by 15%. Light of Dawn 15%. Tears Deliverance 32%. So those are big buffs right there to your main healing contributors, I would say, right? Word of Glory is, of course, not changed at all. But you press Holy Shock a lot. You know, Divine Toll press Holy Shock for you. And then you have Rising Sunlight with Daybreak, which is going to cast even more Holy Shock. So that's a lot of extra healing. It's probably okay that Beacon doesn't transfer as much healing, once again, because it overheals quite a bit, and number 2, because they're buffing these other spells, which all contribute to Beacon healing, but you get what I'm saying there. They're sort of like nerfing something, buffing something else, so maybe it's a wash in the end. We'll have to wait and see, but those are the major changes coming to Holy Paladin in the War Within. I think the biggest change for me is getting access to Barrier of Faith plus Reclamation, that they're no longer tied to a choice run. I think that's fantastic. And then we're really going to have to see how this Light of the Martyr stuff plays out. If the sort of anti-beacon on yourself is worth it to have extra Holy Shock healing. Remember, you get 20% up to 35%, and then you can add in another 15% on top of that with these buffs right here. So that might be a lot of Holy Shock healing. We're going to have to wait and see how good that is. But those are the major changes that are coming so far. I think they're all fine. To me, I think it's great. I think it's actually good that they made Light of the Martyr a passive option now. Button bloat is a serious problem for every spec, and it's nice if they remove any of the buttons. I like having access to Barrier again. We're going to have to wait and see how good that is. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I would love to hear from you. I'm going to keep covering the War Within and all the big changes that are coming, and especially on the specs that I'm going to be playing. And yeah, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Love y'all, and we'll see you in the next one.